Well, good morning, everyone. This is WX Live webinar number 138. Today is Friday, January the 30th, 2015, and this is Andy Stapleton. He'll be presenting today, creating a program/service without an analysis, and why would you do it? It's all yours.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Mid-morning, coffee still on the brew. We're good to go. So one of the things that we're as a group, we kind of look at is really what do you guys need to learn, and I want to spend a couple minutes talking about that before we get really kicking. We obviously jump up here and teach what we know or teach what we think we know, at least, and usually there's always enhancements to it. But your feedback on that posting that Tim put out of what you would like to learn, what you would like to understand, what you would like to know is going to help all of us in the future. Not only do we are going to be able to expand to other folks that have other knowledges than the few that we have now, but second of all, we get to have an excellent set of YouTube videos on doing about anything.
Yeah, that's a good point, Andy.
And we really need to have that feedback from you, and the more you ask for, the better off we'll be. And eventually I'll be able to sleep in the morning, so will Pete, and we'll just point you to a video and go on. And the only videos we'll have then is how to do it in the latest version.
Yeah. And for those of y'all that saw that post and like what Andy was saying, today's webinar is a direct result of that, of somebody comment on that.
That is correct.
On that posting, and also the one that received most of the votes was the WebDev for noobs. That's going to be presented by Professor Glenn in an upcoming webinar, hopefully next week. So,
and yes, that is my truck. Just saying.
Yeah.
I'm fixing
all right, Andy, it's all
yours. Code. Okay, so the question is, or the statement out there was, why?
Can you make your
yeah.
code bigger, please?
Yeah. Give me a reason for using the analysis. It's not working. Is there another way to do that? There it goes. It just was being a pain in the butt. Is there a reason for you using analysis? Why would you use it? And how do you code without having to use an analysis at all? So let's kind of go over a couple things. What is the analysis for? Well, the analysis is rudimentary, just the basic reason. The basic reason for the analysis is to be able to utilize all of the H file functions without having to define what they're doing. So you can just import directly in all of these all of the analysis. Don't do anything with it, and yet now you can use all the H add, H modify, H deletes, search, the whole 9 yards, and you've got all that ability. Okay, so that opens up that door. Do you have to have the analysis in order to run an application? No, you don't have to have one at all. But what it does mean is now you have to define, or you have to lay out and set up every bit of your file structures, functionality, what you're going to do on an add, change, delete, things like this. There are specific things that I build that I don't use the analysis for. Straightforward. I just don't use it. I don't need to. And part of that is services, Windows services. I write several Windows services out there that run processes in the background, and the Windows services, they do a couple things. They'll go get data from the database, and they'll process that database, and then what they'll do is they'll call a web service, or they'll do an update. So that's what I'm going to show you first, because it's the more practical, in my opinion, the more practical reason for not using an analysis in your day-to-day coding. So what this one does is it grabs a bunch of transactions out there and says, I got to go process all these transactions. So we're running a service. So we have the service execution. The service execution, what it does is it processes our what we call push-to-paste. And all push-to-paste does is goes and gets out of my push-to-paste data all of the records where the current status is either an estimate or pending, and it fetches that data. I use classes and I use arrays, and I'll show you why we're going to use those across the board when we get into the coding of one of our own, okay? Because I'll give you a test program of actually having a class and let it do everything without using the analysis. But, so I'm going to go fetch all these records that the status is either an estimate or pending, and then I'm looking in the array to see if it's empty, okay? If it's empty, hey, we processed them all. Get out of here. Otherwise, if it's false, then I'm going to get the first record there, is what I'm going to get, and I am going to call my web service. When I'm done with my web service, I'm going to delete that array record. Now, here's the way this works. The arrays, if you delete a record, then the next record is 1. So you basically all I have to do is delete one and get the next one until there ain't no more. Okay? And works, it just works cleanly that way. So this is all I'm doing is looping through this. The fetch data is fairly simple. All I'm doing is doing a select from the P2P management, the table out there. I'm fetching it and throwing it into the array. That's what I'm doing. So now, do I need an analysis for this? Absolutely not. I don't need an analysis at all. The fact that I have the array record up here that says this is the rec class and this is how the record looks is all I need. Okay? Once I have that, I have every field from that select statement, and it works out nicely. The way it works out is that the calling and the placing of the file to array from the data source puts every element that I selected here that matches name to name, field to field. If I don't have this field in the array, it won't move it in there. And I'll move each one of those directly in there. I could literally take this and do a select asterisk. And everybody knows that I don't really do select asterisks. But I could literally do a select asterisk and it will do exactly the same thing. Everything worked fine. Okay? Because what it does is that file to array matches up this field, and this field against the same fields in your array. And if those names match exactly, then it will move the data value into that array field and add a new array. A good way to test that is actually step through it in debug code, and when you get to this line where it does the file to array, you'll see it creating a bunch of new classes for the records is what it'll do. And that's what's happening, is it's basically doing exactly what you would do by code, one record at a time. Okay? Now, can you still run without an analysis and not use a class? Yeah, but you can't. You would still have to have some kind of structure to put the data results into it, because unless you plan on using and coding even the table, adding a line to the table and things like this, the data source, you don't have a way to assign the data source directly to a table. The only way to do is create your array element and then assign the variable for the array to the table, and you can see it. And we're going to go through that. Here's what we're going to do. Okay? Any questions so far? So now here is a practical aspect of what I would use without an analysis. There's no analysis here. I don't use any H functions other than the file to array and stuff like this, but there is no H file functions used in this process at all. Nothing is being done here. And I've got about 3 or 4 of them that do this. Programming-wise, let's start on the next step of how you would do it, and you don't have the ability to access, you don't have the ability, either you're going to have to type in everything on the analysis because you don't have access to be able to query it in, because it won't let you get to the structure. Now, I've had to run into that problem where the privileges that they would give you for a database does not include you being able to get to the structure schema of the database. And that's what's necessary in order to get the field. So you run into a kind of a problem there is what you get into. There are specific functions in WinDev that will allow you to do that. We're not going to discuss them today, but I'm going to get you along that same pike. And the reason why we're not going to really discuss them is because Glenn Rathke and I are already working on a process that allows you to transfer data from any table to, or any data file to any data file. Okay, and it's not that we don't want to show you; it's just that we're still working through the problems with it, and we want to make sure we got it right before anybody else sees the blasted thing. So, but I'll get you into kind of a pointing where we were going with that. The thing that you can do is using function like HListFile. You can use the HConnection, which allows you to connect to the database and pull back. This actually will pull you back all of the file functions or all the files out of a database, things like this. So you can pull all this information back, and using a few tricks along these lines here, you could actually use an alias and still use the hadd, hmodify, hdelete functions without an analysis. But it does take some effort to go through. It does exactly take some effort to go through. None of it's going to be easy, hence the reason why I say if you can use the analysis, use the analysis. Don't use it because you don't think you need it. Okay? So what I'm going to show you is we've had a class test database up there in Postgres for quite a while, and the class test has has a table called members. And the members, and I'm going to give you connection to it if you're going to get this application. I'm going to zip it up after we're done, and we'll put it out there, and you guys will be able to play with it if you want to. It's just a test database. The main thing here is you got no window, you got no analysis, so what do we need to do? We still need to be able to access the data is what we need to do. Good morning, Glenn. He's walking through the airport. Glenn, we're seeing your video.
I did. Yeah, I'm sitting here at the airport. Can't miss this one.
Yeah. So anyway, we were talking about just some of the things that you and I were going through on you were using the HListFile and things like that. Just pointing them in there. We wasn't going very far with it, but just telling them that there is ways to do that. So, like I said, we got the application up there. We got the we got this little file up there. And we're going to use it as our test bed. Now, again, I've got no analysis in this program. Not going to use it, but I am going to use classes. As you can see, I've got a members class here already developed. When I'm in this members class, what do I need to do? I need to have some kind of structure in order to put the data in. The structure, I define that above the class of having the different fields that I'm going to be working with. Okay? And then I'm going to create an array of that structure, and I'm going to create one record of that structure. That's all I'm going to do. Then I need to create a couple other methods, and I was working on methods, but I got tied up with American Litho for a few minutes, so we get to work through them together a little bit. We'll do at least one or two, but I'll finish all three before it's over with. And there's a couple of these functions that we've got to do. Number one is we've got to be able to update or execute an SQL statement against that database. And that's what this is for. The exec SQL, all it takes is whatever statement I send it is what it takes. It does that and then says, okay, did it work or didn't it work? Okay. We don't need a clipboard. And then we need the second one, which is build us a statement to put there. Well, what are the statements we need to build? We need to build an insert, update, or delete statement is what we're doing. And what I was doing here was just now fixing up just now fixing up the insert, then I was going to do the delete and the update last. So I'm going to go ahead and finish up these values here and then show you how that works. So what I do is I go ahead and grab this. I'm pretty much a lazy programmer, so I'm going to put that there. I'm never going to insert the member sysid on nil because that's an auto increment field, so I'm going to put a single quote %1, and we're going to put in, let's see, every one of them's a string after that, so we got another one. That's what you can do is %2. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay. So now I've got all the values. What I got to do is the record. You can see that I'm bringing in the record structure up here as a passed in parameter. So all I need to do now is do a string build or SQL statement equals string build SQL statement, comma, arg rec. We're going to copy this. Don't need that one. We need the next one. Comma. SQL statement is there, and then we just do an exec SQL statement. Now, what that does now is if I send the action type to insert a name, it's going to come in here. It's going to build in the correct. Don't like you. What did? Oh, can't do that twice. It's going to build the correct statement there, and then it's going to execute that statement. We're done with it. Okay. What else do we need to do? Since we're inserting, we also need to add it to the array because we don't have it in the array, do we? So what we do now is an array add. We're going to add it to my AR rec, comma, and arg rec. Now I have it in the array also. Why do I do that? Well, I could go fetch from the database again. I could certainly go do that, but that's an extra hit to the database that I may or may not need to do. Okay? Since I have all the information here, I really don't need to do this, so I'm going to go ahead and do it this way. The only problem is I really don't have the sysid anymore, so if I make a change to it, that's gone. So the only way to actually get this correct is I would have to do fetch data again. Okay? Now that's a new method, and we're going to do that method right now because we need to have that, and we're going to call it fetch data. And that requires another code brick, and if anybody wants my code bricks, I'll be glad to send you all of the code bricks we have. It's a file that you can put into a directory. We'll do that. Excuse me. All right, so what I'm going to do here is do my loop. And that's going to be ds fetch. My connection is going to be ds and dbcon. Got no params, no params. Rock and roll. Now, all I need to do here is a file to array. Excuse me, I've been sneezing a little bit this morning. Ds fetch. And the SQL statement's going to be real easy. Select asterisk from member.
Andy, we have a question.
Yeah.
Okay, this question is from Derek. It says, why is the SQL statement not a class member?
Oh, why is this not a class member? It can be. There's nothing wrong with it, except I really have a problem. It's one of those deals there where I want to keep it encapsulated inside each method, so that way it's destroyed on the way out and there's no possible remnant of a SQL statement laying around. That's the only reason. I just don't do that because any variable that I'm setting inside the member, I want to destroy on the way out of the member. But I mean, if you're privileged, if your preference to have it as a class member and manage it, you can. A lot of times, if I need to send any kind of statement at all, I can write whatever statement I want and call that function without having to call anything in the method. So what I'm saying here is like the exec SQL, I can literally call that from outside. I don't need to call this build statement first. I can build that outside the deal and do it myself. So, because this just takes an SQL statement there, so it doesn't really matter. But my preference is that if I need to build it inside here, then I want to destroy it on the way out when I'm done. I don't want to have any remnants. That's the only reason. Okay? Hopefully that answers the question well.
Yeah, thanks a lot for the question.
Okay, so now we've got the fetch. We got the insert. We need to have the update and the delete. One of the greatest things that Glenn ever showed me was these little brackets. Or did I show Glenn? I can't remember which. One of us showed each other when we were farting around. I think Glenn showed me. So basically, I can build a SQL statement and do everything that I want to do to the SQL statement and then just fill in the values as necessary. So I can do a set. And so on and so forth. SQL is a wonderful language because basically it is the same no matter what database you're messing with. The only difference is the data types that you have to deal with. But for the most part, they're all exactly the same. And even hyperfile SQL, for most of it, is the same. There's a few statements that it does not support. But that's changing in 20. It's my understanding that there's going to be supporting a lot more functionality in 20. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 678. I figured something was wrong there. And let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay. The commas in front of these. That's the other thing I do is I put the commas in front of the items so that way I don't have any issues afterwards. Okay. Works out nicely. So I created that one. And then the last one would be the delete, and we'll get the string builds in here, because all I need to do now on this is statement equals and I could actually do a exec SQL to be even more cooler about the whole thing. How cool that is. Now we're cool about that one. So you can actually go that direction. The update statement, you're going to be basically doing the exact same thing as I've got up here. It makes no difference whatsoever. The only other thing that we'll end up doing is we will update the array to match. Now, one last piece we got to put in here. Number sysid. Okay. And the last thing we're going to need to do then is we're going to do an array seek. And we're going to do as linear first. Member sysid argRec.member sysid. And now it's a couple things that we want to do here. Basically what I'm going to end up doing is we're going to set up, if you notice that we have the rec up there. So what I'm going to do is if index is greater than 0, rec equals arrec ndx. And I think I made a mistake above, but we'll find out. Rec equals argRec. And I'm going to explain that in just a second. I'm going to double check that I didn't do something stupid, and I did. Dynamic. So let's talk about this for a second. The dynamic functionality setting up says I'm going to use the exact same memory space of whatever I pointed to. So if that record structure is pointed to the third element in that array, any changes to that record structure will also be affected in the array. I don't have to do anything more. That's why you use the dynamic. The passing of the record structure by using the argument rec says this is the new record that I want to deal with, and I could actually compare the record against the arg record and make and do whatever changes. So what this does again is it allows me not to have to pounce to the database and redo it. I can do an update statement to the database, and then I can array seek, find the member, and when I find it, I assign it to the dynamic record, and then this right here will then move the values from one field that matches to the other field that matches, and now your array now matches whatever changes you made on the screen. Simple. We all confused yet? It's all auto magic stuff. That's what it is. Works out nicely. It really does. So now what we got here is we've really got practically everything that we need. We have the structure of what we're dealing with. We have the different arrays that we're dealing with. We have a statement here to execute the SQL. Okay. We have the ability to build the statement itself depending upon what we want to do on insert, update, or delete. And we have the fetch data. Now, can we make this even, better? Yes. I mean, we can do it where we can select for a certain member or something like that if we want to. You can get all kinds of fancy. You can send a filter string to it and do a where clause on the fly. All kinds of things is what you can do in here. And if you've worked with the other classes that Pete and I use and I've put out before, you'll find that there is we've got the insert, join, inner join, all kinds of things in there that you can add to it. But right at the moment, we need to start actually using this thing and seeing how it works. So the next step on this little exercise is we need to create a window. So we're going to create a blank window. Here it is. We need to do a couple things to it. Well, we need to declare the record structure. So let's do a save as on this. And we'll call it member. And we need to declare the classes that we're going to work with. So I'm going to call it member data is member class. I am going to, members class, I'm sorry. I am going to need a record structure here. So you're saying, well, wait a minute, you don't have a class for a member structure. How do you declare that? That's even easier. Because I can declare member record is member class dot, and there's the structure right there. So I now have the structure for the record right off the bat. It's ready to go. I'm good to go with it. And now I can actually look at member record and I see every one of the fields just like I want to see them in IntelliSense, and that means I can use it. So when I've got there, what do I need to do? Well, I need to fetch data. So I'm going to go ahead and put in a couple lines of code here. Member data, fetch data. And now we need to build the window itself. I'm going to put a table on here so we can show the data. All right. Table's going to come over here and says, okay, how am I going to deal with the table? Well, I want to do an existing variable. I don't want to do a field control by programming and things like that. And go from there. So I'm going to go into this. I'm going to say I want the member data and I want the array. Okay. When I do that, I get now to see all of the fields. So what I want to do is I'll go ahead and put in I'm going to put in his name, his email, his phone number, city, and state. And that's all I'm going to put in. And I can put in more, I can put in less. It really doesn't matter. And I'll tell you why. One of the cool things about using arrays is that if I don't do anything else with this, whatever the row of the table is the same index row inside the array. So if I'm highlighted the fourth record, I know it's the fourth record in the array too, which makes it pretty easy. So going through that, let's give us some room, make it look nice, and we're going to do two things with this before it's over with. Let's go ahead and turn off a couple of these things because it's kind of silly. We'll go from there. And what we're going to do here is we're going to look at the content. You can see I've got the member data array record, but I want to get the actual record when somebody highlights it and I want to display it below, kind of like a hot field, a set of hot fields. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to do this and take the first record. I'm going to take this upper part. I'm going to say OK on that. And what you can see, it puts a little bracket and an N. Now, you may not see it because it's kind of small, but it puts a little bracket and an N in there saying this is whatever number it is. Give me back whatever number it is. So now what we need to do is go ahead and get the data. I go into the code. And down here in selecting a row, this is where we do it. First of all, I want to make sure I have some records to select in the first place. One of the biggest mistakes that happens right off the bat is you'll go in there and we'll assign a record, and if there's a record or they click in an area where no record is, you will immediately blow up. Well, we don't want to do that. So we're going to do an if table arrec.empty equals false. Make sure we have one, and table select table arrec is greater than 0. So we'll make sure it's there, and we make sure we got one selected. Then what I can do is use the member record equals the table arrec.value. Last step is I'm going to do a source to screen. You're going to see why I'm going to do that here in just a moment. The source to screen says now whatever I'm showing there, I'm going to show the rest of the data at the same time. And here's what we can do. I'm going to put fields down here to show all of this data. Okay. So I'm going to have the member name. Oh, shut up. Quit arguing with me. Put that there. So we got the member there. Let's put a few more in there. And let's see, what are all my fields? So I'm going to go in here to the types. You can see there's the structure. So we're going to go member. We're going to go ahead and quit that. I want edit. Now we're going to put in address. City. State. Province. Phone. Postal code. And we'll put the email over here just for the fun of it. Okay, so now let's clean this up just a little bit. So we don't want Pete to think we're not pretty here on our stuff. Now the question is we've got to kind of link these together is what we got to do. Okay. And the way to link them is you right mouse click description. We're going to go to the link. I'm going to go to the variables, and I'm going to hook it directly to the member record. So each one of these I'm going to hook to that member record by doing this. Now this, you know, one thing that I'm showing here is exactly the same thing I do with my current ones that is using the analysis. The only difference that I get to do is that when I do the add, change, and delete, I don't use SQL statements most of the time. I don't have to. You go ahead and use the HAD and things like that already, and it allows me some pretty nice and pretty quick. And that's where all of the different stuff in the classes are set up in order for it to quickly get to that point, and I don't have to code it all the time. I only have to code it once. Okay, So let's see what we got here. We got one last on the email, and there we go. Now, if all worked properly, then we literally should be fine. And I did get a little note that I had made a mistake in one of my records here. And I think if you're talking about there, it's there on the insert. Oh, yeah, you're right. Right there it is. Okay. And that's fine. I'm glad he did that. So let's go ahead and do a go and run this thing and see what happens. We are going out to the cloud, so we're going to see whether or not that I got all my stuff correct and hooked up properly. We'll see what happens. Well, we at least got that far. So that is actually running. Question is are we going any further with it? So let's see whether or not that we're getting everything that we want here. All right. And the problem is, that's right. Okay. Let's see what we got going on here. So what we're going to do here is we're going to stop it right there. And let's see what bug we ran into here and see if we got any records at all. All right. All right, see if we got anything in the file to array. Oh, see, we actually got the records. So what did I do wrong? Anybody knows the answer? I will give them nothing but a good, uh-oh, Andy, you screwed up, and that's what you did. Come on. Can anybody know the answer what I did wrong? That's right, table display. I did not do a table display. Without that, no records show up. Hey, looky there. Now, what's happening is, to see the first one, you can see the data here. So each one that I click now, you can see the data changing with it. Okay. So now what have I done? Well, I've kind of set up the thing to where I can actually update the records if I want to. So let's go down that step. I've got it here on the screen. What do I need to do now? Well, I need to put a button on here saying that I want to update record as an example. And in there, I'm going to member data dot build statement. I'm going to send what record? Member record, because that's the record I have. And I'm going to say that's an update. Okay. Then I need to do a table display. PA current. So what that's going to do is it's going to go in there. We're going to create that SQL statement change. We're going to send it to it, and then we're going to redisplay the table. So let's go through that process, all right? And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to stop it right there so we can walk through the debug, and then that's as far as I'm going to take you today. And I could actually show you. We probably do the insert too, because the insert won't take very much. But let's take this right here where I've got test person here, and I want to give it an email address. Test@test. Oh, we got one more thing to do. I screwed up. We got one more thing to do first. Now we're going to do a screen to source, because we made changes to the screen. So we got to do that. That's before anybody caught me. You notice I caught that one first before any of y'all did. And so we're going to test at test.com. Now we're going to do the update. Oop, we did the update. Now you notice that the test at test.com showed up. So let's send out another one. Let's send out Tim here. We're going to give him an email address. Email.com. Okay, so we're going to hit the update. It stops right here on the build statement. We're ready to go. If you notice, if you highlight this in debug, it says member record equals P member structure, which is what I want it to do. So we're going to the detailed step. It's going to come in here and it's going to say, okay, let's go 1, 2, where we're going to go? We're going to go to the update statement. The update statement, just a second, guys, I need to kill this, and I'll decline that at the moment. Shut up. I think it's going to ring a little while. Sorry about that, guys. It's going to go through the update side, and it's going to say, I'm going to build this statement, then I'm going to execute it. So if we hit step by step, build the SQL statement. Yay, finally quit. And now it's going to do the string build on the statements. You can see right there that I've got update member, And if I do the next step, what I got is the actual SQL statement. How do I know what's going on in there? This is the other part. I can actually look at the SQL statement into my expression, and I can see exactly what I'm sending up there. I'm updating the member, I'm setting the email address there, member, all this information is getting updated where the member sysid equals 17. If you notice that inside the table itself, the member sysid is not there, several of these fields are not there. They don't have to be using arrays. So if I say, yep, that's good, we're off and running, let that thing continue, guess what? We now have both Tim and test person updated with a proper email address, off and running. So now you say, how do you enter in a brand new person? Brand new person is even easier than that, because all I need to do here is I need to have a save button, and this is where things kind of change. I'm going to go up here and I'm going to put a arg action type. Okay, and make it a string. And I'm going to change this from an update to just be a save. And I'm going to have another button up here that says add, update, and delete. What are those three buttons going to do? The only thing those three buttons are going to do is some very simple things. This one here is going to say my arg action type equals insert. The other thing it's going to do, though, is going to do the member record variable reset. On the member record, and then do a source screen. What that's going to do is clear out all the fields. It's going to make sure everything's empty before it gets started. Okay? What is the update going to do? That one's even easier, because the only thing we're going to do is change our action type equals to update. And the last one, we're going to change this one to delete. And that's all we're going to do. Save is where things are going to change. If you notice, the only thing I'm doing here is I'm going to change one line. I'm going to send this ARG action type. That's the only thing I need to do on the save button. Why? Because I've set everything up previously. It's already done. I don't need to do anything more. Okay? So now I've got all this information, and the only thing I need to do at this point is to say, okay, well, let's make it work. So we hit the go button again. We got all these. Let me go ahead and get rid of Mark up here because he's in there twice anyway. So what we're going to do is we're going to delete him, and then we're going to hit the save button. Okay. What didn't happen? Well, we need to do a refresh is what we need to do, and that's in the actual build statement issue. We need to do we've got a fetch up here for fetch data. We need to do a fetch data here too in order to solve that problem. So now we go. You notice now that Mark has only got one of them in there. So let's get rid of him on this one so we can see that it actually worked. And rock and roll. See, now he's gone. By using the TA current, well, I'm not, even though I refreshed the entire fetch data array, the only thing I did here is it looks like it just deleted the one record right out of the middle. That's all it did. My add, when I click it, now everything's blank. I can put in my name. Didn't know that one. If I did that correctly, what I should have is, boom, there's Andy right there. All of them done. So now you got add, change, delete. You got a class that handles all three. You got SQL statements out the wazoo. And guess what? Not one single analysis in the program whatsoever. The biggest thing about the analysis is, again, it sets up a couple of things, and a couple of things that I use extensively. Very extensively, I use them. One of them is the UML classes. It generates the classes for the record structure automatically if I use that. So that's kind of a gimme there. The other thing is all the hfile, hadd, hupdates, hmodify, hdeletes, all of those functions are available to me. So I strongly suggest that you utilize the analysis if at all possible. But is it mandatory? No. With a little bit of class work, a little bit of knowledge of what you're going after, you don't need it. You don't have to have it, but I would strongly suggest it. There's a lot of little pieces in there that'll certainly help you in the future. How are we doing? Oh, wow, we are just under 7 minutes left. So we're going to leave it at that. We have any questions out there anybody needs to ask?
I don't see any questions right now, Andy.
That is freaking awesome.
Hey, Wolfgang, do you need to say anything? Wolfgang's here with us. Let me unmute his
Hey, Wolf.
mic.
Hello.
He did.
No, I think you gave a good explanation. I'll
Very
follow
good.
through.
Well, I appreciate that.
And still no questions, Andy, so.
Awesome. Awesome. All I can say is thanks for your time this morning. Hopefully this will get you past what you were trying to look for. And be good or be good at it is all I can say.
Okay, goodbye.
Enjoy your weekend. Bye.
Bye.